Welcome back to the Foundry, made by Forge College. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today for this explainer. Now, if you joined us for our previous lesson, Applying Parallel Patterns, Project Increment, you know we tackled exactly how to resolve account conflicts and reorder work using deterministic retries. We made sure our transactions played nicely together. But today, today we are going much deeper. We're moving completely past the logic of account conflicts and slamming right into the actual, physical limits of the Solana machine. We're going to explore exactly how Sealevel assigns its limited compute and memory resources to each transaction, and why mastering these constraints is literally the absolute key to parallel execution. Okay, let's dive right into this. Think of today's agenda as a tour of a beautifully minimalist, patent-style factory blueprint. First, a welcome to the factory, then we'll check out the conveyor belt model and dig into the mechanics of resource limits. After that, we'll look at the cost of CPIs, compare fast updates versus settlements, and wrap up with your key takeaways and next steps. Section 1. Welcome to the factory. All right. It is time to shift our mindset away from abstract code and focus entirely on physical constraints. I want you to imagine Sealevel not just as software, but as a highly efficient, perfectly tuned factory floor. Every single transaction you send, that's a work package. Looking at our factory blueprint here, the conveyor lanes represent our parallel execution units, basically the number of packages Sealevel can safely run at the exact same time. But to actually process a package on a lane, you need two crucial things. First, you need bench space, which represents the memory, or transient heap, available to your program while it runs. And second, you need machine time, which is your compute, measured in compute units. So remember, every single package needs a lane, space on the bench, and time on the machine. Section 2. The conveyor belt model. So, how do these parts actually interact on a busy day? Well, we immediately run into a massive bottleneck, the account lock. You can think of an account lock as a highly specialized factory tool. Only one work package can use this tool at a time. If multiple packages need the same tool, no way, they can't run in parallel. They just have to wait their turn on the same lane, or they get bumped to the next scheduling round entirely. But here is where resource management gets truly compounding. When a packet holds that tool for a really long time, it isn't just blocking other packages. It is actively sitting on the conveyor belt, hogging precious bench space, and draining machine time while it works. Section 3. Mechanics of resource limits. Okay, so we get the factory metaphor, right? But how does Sealevel actually enforce these limits at transaction execution time? Let's walk through the mechanical reality of your code running on the network. Step 1. Your instruction starts executing. Step 2. As it runs, compute units are continuously deducted from your budget based on how complex the operation is. Stuff like cryptographic checks and complex looping constructs, those are going to cost you a lot more. And step 3, if your transaction happens to exhaust its per-transaction budget, bam, the machine aggressively pulls the emergency brake. Execution abruptly halts, the transaction totally fails, and it might trigger deterministic retries at the scheduler level. It's a completely unforgiving process, but honestly, that is exactly why it's so incredibly fast. Section 4. The cost of CPIs. Now, what happens when we throw cross-program-invocations, or CPIs, into the mix? They are the literal wrench in the works of our nice, clean factory metaphor. So I want to pose this question directly to you. What exactly do you think happens to our neatly sized little work package during a CPI? It completely inflates. Your neatly wrapped package suddenly expands right there on the conveyor belt. When you CPI into another program, you aren't just making a quick little phone call. You are temporarily dragging that other program's entire call frame, its stack baseline, and potentially new account buffers directly onto your bench space. And obviously, you are paying for all of its machine time straight out of your compute budget. Across the various courses and learning paths we offer at Forge College, this is usually the exact aha moment where developers realize why their transactions keep failing out of nowhere. You thought you sent a tiny shoebox, but a nested CPI just turned it into a massive shipping container. Section 5. Fast updates versus settlements. Let's see how this builds into a real-world scenario. Imagine you run a program that processes user orders, and two very different transaction patterns arrive in the exact same batch. Comparing the data here, pattern A is a lightweight fast update. It uses about 10,000 compute units, needs a tiny 4 kilobyte memory footprint, and barely uses any CPIs. Now look at pattern B, the settlement. This is a heavy CPI-rich beast of an operation. It burns through 120,000 compute units, hogs 64 kilobytes of memory for buffers, and has a CPI depth of 2 to 3. I want you to imagine these two vastly different packages hitting the factory floor at the exact same time. This brilliantly illustrates the scheduling outcome. With pattern A, we get swift scheduling. The packages are so small and neat that Sealevel can run a ton of them concurrently across multiple lanes. It is a beautiful, synchronized dance. But pattern B? Oh, those are absolute lane hugs. Because they demand so much bench space and machine time, they monopolize the lanes completely. They're forced to serialize. A sudden influx of pattern B transactions doesn't just slow themselves down, they drastically reduce the effect of parallelism for everything else on the network, dropping overall throughput for everyone.
Section 6. Key takeaways and next steps.
So how do we actually fix this? What's the game plan? Here are your golden factory optimization heuristics for Sealevel CPU management and memory efficiency. Rule number 1, always prefer smaller, tightly scoped packages. Rule number 2, reduce your CPI depth. If you can safely inline logic or pre-compute Oracle data off-chain, just do it. Rule number 3, limit your working sets by using compact account layouts to save that precious bench space. And finally, when you inevitably have heavy work that you just can't avoid, don't let it compete with your light transactions. Intentionally design it as a serialized step in a multi-transaction workflow.
The absolutely crucial point I want you to walk away with is this idea right here. A small increase in resource demand can cause a throughput cliff. Pushing a transaction just slightly over a scheduling threshold, whether that happens to be one too many compute units or slightly too much memory, it doesn't just slow things down a tiny bit, it can cause a disproportionate, sudden drop in overall performance. It's literally like falling off a cliff. And that brings us to your homework. To prepare for our next explainer on CPU management and Sealevel, I want you to go out and collect your profiling data. Find your average compute units, figure out your typical CPI depth, and locate any compute exhaustion errors you've been hitting lately. Having that data ready is going to make our next deep dive incredibly practical. I strongly encourage you to visit Forge College to explore a lot more about this topic, access our extended Web3 learning materials, and get ready for the next level. So, as you look at your own code today, ask yourself, are your transactions gliding swiftly down the conveyor belt, or are they those expanding shipping containers just waiting to crash your protocol's throughput? Thanks for joining me on this tour of the factory floor brought to you by Forge College, and I will see you in the next explainer.